Hey guys, tonight we're traveling far. So far, in fact, that there are no pyramids, no cities, no language, no names. There aren't even humans yet. You're in a different body, in a different world, and you're about to do something incredibly dangerous. You're about to stand up. You are crouched low in the dappled light of a thinning forest, where the shadows of acacia trees stretch long across a grassland just starting to assert itself. It's about 7 million years ago in what will one day be called East Africa, and everything around you smells alive, earthy, musky, with a hint of something predatory in the breeze. You are small, hairy, and cautious. You shuffle forward on all fours, knuckles brushing the soil. Then, slowly you do it. You rise up, just a little, onto your hind limbs. You peer over the tall grass. The light changes. The wind hits your face differently. The world feels larger, more open, more dangerous. You have just done something that will change everything. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. That small click sends a big signal to the algorithm. That long-form, serious educational content still matters. And to me, it's an incredibly meaningful show of support. Thank you so much for helping keep this channel going strong. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are not human yet. You don't even know what that is. You're part of a lineage that will one day be called hominins. And tonight, you're the starring role in a long, strange evolutionary drama. The stage? A planet that's shifting beneath your feet. The forests that once stretched endlessly are thinning. The climate is cooling, drying. What used to be a cozy canopy overhead is being replaced by open sky and whispering grasses. This is the Pliocene, an age of transition, uncertainty, and risk, which, now that I think about it, sounds a lot like high school. You move carefully through this mosaic world. Patches of forest still linger, but open savannas now dominate. It's no coincidence. Global climate shifts are slowly reshaping Africa's landscape, and every species, including yours, is adapting or failing. This isn't a peaceful nature documentary moment. It's the evolutionary version of a reality show with very high stakes and zero reruns. Among your ancestors is a creature called Sahelanthropus chadensis, nicknamed Tumai, meaning hope of life in the Daza language. Found in Chad, this ancient skull has one odd feature that grabbed scientists' attention. The foramen magnum, the hole where the spine enters the skull, is located underneath, not behind. This suggests an upright posture. That one anatomical clue. It's a whisper from the past saying, "Hey, I walked." Walking on two legs isn't just weird, it's downright hazardous. You've given up the stability of four limbs, the speed of running quadrupeds, and the safety of climbing quickly. In exchange, you get what exactly? A slightly better view? The ability to carry a few snacks? Historians still argue whether bipedalism evolved primarily for freeing your hands, for long-distance travel, for keeping cool under the hot sun, or just to spot predators before they spot you. Maybe it was all of the above. Or maybe it was just a cosmic accident with surprisingly good PR. But here's the real kicker. Walking upright might be the original body hack, but it comes with a steep price. You're slower now, less agile, and eventually, when your pelvis evolves to accommodate this posture, childbirth is going to become much more dangerous. So, congratulations. Your world is full of odd cousins. Take Ardipithecus ramidus, or Ardi. She lived about 4.4 million years ago and was discovered in Ethiopia. Her feet still have a grasping big toe, like a tree climber. But her pelvis? It's gearing up for walking. She's the evolutionary equivalent of a 2-for-1 coupon. Part arboreal gymnast, part aspiring pedestrian. And she's proof that evolution doesn't draw a straight line. It scribbles, loops, and sometimes doodles in the margins. For millions of years, your daily life involves no tools beyond what a modern chimp might use. A handy stick here, a flat rock there. Want to crack a nut? Fine. Find a big enough stone. Need termites? Easy. Poke around with a twig. The most complex tool in your possession is a good memory for where the leopards sleep. You are deeply attuned to your world, your senses honed, your muscles efficient. But you haven't yet changed anything beyond your own body. You haven't reshaped a single object with intent. The stick you use is still just a stick. The stone, still a stone. There's no craftsmanship, no foresight, no, what if I hit this? Just so. That leap, the first moment someone doesn't just use a stone, but breaks it on purpose to make it sharper, is still far away. But tonight, in this shifting grassland, the idea is starting to form. Maybe it happens when you see a rock split by accident and notice the jagged edge. Maybe it's just frustration with a tough root. Or hunger. Hunger is a powerful innovator. Whatever the reason, your hands, now free thanks to your upright stance, have started to linger on certain stones. Your fingers run over the edges. Your mind, still quiet and instinctual, is beginning to grasp something strange and new, that the world around you is not just a stage, it's raw material. And in time, you won't just survive in this place, you'll start to reshape it. For now, though, you wander on, a small, upright ape with an uncertain future. But already, your body tells a story of change. You've risen onto 2 legs. Your hands are no longer needed for walking. They're waiting. Waiting to build, to break, to create. And soon, very soon, you'll pick up a rock. And instead of using it as is, you'll strike it. Deliberately. A spark, not of fire, but of thought. That's when everything will change. The carcass is still warm. You crouch nearby, hidden by tall yellow grass. The lion is gone, dragged away by the scent of another rival, perhaps, or just full from the kill. A pair of hyenas had their turn too. You waited. You watched. And now, in the heat of the Ethiopian afternoon, silence settles back over the savannah like a lazy fog. The only sound is the soft buzz of flies, the creak of bone, and the quiet thrum of your own breath. You are Australopithecus. You do not know that name, of course, but your body does. Your upper limbs are strong, suited for climbing. Your shoulders hang high, knuckles calloused from generations of swinging through branches. But your hips and legs? They're different. Upright, forward-facing, built for walking. Perhaps not elegantly, but effectively. You are a creature caught mid-change. You belong to no single world, which unfortunately means you must survive in both. Before you, the antelope's hide is thick and tough. Your small, square teeth, good for chewing plants, can't pierce the leathery skin. Your fingers fumble across the ground. They close around a rock. Not sharp, not crafted, just jagged enough. You press it to the animal's flesh and saw, back and forth. The effort is clumsy, inefficient, but it works. A wound opens. The scent of blood sharpens, and you lean in. Later, long after you're gone, someone will dig up this very site near modern-day Dakika. They'll study the bones you left behind, noticing faint but unmistakable marks, fine scratches from a stone edge, and they'll realize what you just did. You used a tool. You didn't make it yet, but you saw its potential. Your story doesn't begin with fire or language. It begins here, with that rock, with the simple, world-changing act of thinking about shape. Now let's rewind, just a little. Somewhere to the west, in what will one day be Kenya, a different kind of scene unfolds. You are still Australopithecus, perhaps Australopithecus afarensis, a cousin to the famous Lucy. Your body is small, your arms long, your stride still a little awkward. But today you are not foraging or watching carcasses. Today you are smashing rocks. At a site known today as Lomekwi 3, just west of Lake Turkana, the ground is scattered with enormous, crudely modified stones. These aren't random chips. These are tools. Deliberately fractured cores created by smashing one rock against another. They're big, heavy, the opposite of subtle. But they mark something monumental. Intentionality. The tools here are dated to around 3.3 million years ago. That's before the genus Homo, before what many people would even call human. Which means you, a non-human hominin, are the maker. You have crossed an invisible line. You are not just reacting to nature, you are rearranging it. The Lomekwian technique is simple. Place a heavy core on a flat anvil stone. Strike it sharply with a third rock. And crack, a sharp flake breaks off. Repeat until your core has useful edges. Yes, it's rough. Yes, it's inefficient. But here's the kicker. You now understand fracture. You know how rocks break. You're using physics without knowing the word for it. Historians still argue whether these tools were made consistently by the same group or rediscovered over and over again by different hominins. But one thing is clear. Something has changed inside your mind. You're not just using the environment, you're reshaping it to fit your needs. This isn't evolution's first tool. Birds use twigs, elephants use logs, otters crack shells on their bellies. But those are found tools. Accidental. This is manufactured. This is the first whisper of technology. Now fast forward about 700,000 years. An eye blink in cosmic time, but enough for another leap. You are no longer Australopithecus. You are something new. Homo habilis, the handyman. Your hands have changed, more dexterous, with a precision grip. Your brain is larger. You still spend your nights in trees, still fear the leopard's stare, but now you have a plan. Your toolkit is Oldowan, named after the Olduvai Gorge where it was first discovered. It's still made of stone, but it's more efficient. The tools are smaller, more portable. The chopper, your go-to device, has a flaked edge used for cutting, scraping, or smashing. No moving parts, no buttons, but it works. You don't just carry one anymore, you carry several. You select rocks not just for shape, but for material. Basalt, quartzite, flint. You have preferences now. Opinions, maybe even favorites. More importantly, you know what you're going to do with them. There's planning. You're thinking ahead. That's a big deal, because foresight is not free. It requires brain power, and brain power is expensive, Remember that expensive tissue hypothesis? We'll get back to that in a moment. Your world is still brutal. You are not a predator. You're more like the cleanup crew. But with these tools, you start to push into new ecological niches. You open bones, access marrow, scrape hides from carcasses. You start to claim leftovers other animals ignore. These new behaviors don't just shape your diet, they begin to shape you. Your jaws shrink, your guts lighten, your hands evolve to make better tools. It's a feedback loop. Better tools allow for better food, which allows for bigger brains, which allow for better tools. And so on. But right now, as you squat beside another scavenged carcass, your mind is focused only on this moment. You grasp the core stone. You strike. A flake snaps free. You test the edge against your thumb. Sharp. You do it again. The first steps have been taken. Not just on 2 legs, but with 2 hands, working together, guided by something new behind your eyes. Something no other animal has. Not yet. Not until you. The vultures always find it first. They circle high above, their wings steady, effortless in the thin blue sky. You spot them from far away, dark specks in motion, drifting over the shimmering heat waves of the grasslands. You know what they mean. Something is dead, or dying. Either way, it's an opportunity. You are Homo habilis, the handyman. And you are not alone. Your small group walks together, nervous, alert, but determined. There's tension in every step. Lions could still be nearby. Hyenas might return. But you have your tools. Stone flakes, choppers, crude scrapers tucked into slings made from bark or hide. No one else on this savanna has what you have. The kill is a zebra. Flies buzz in a dizzy cloud around its body. The lions took the best parts. Meat and organs. The hyenas chewed on muscle and cracked a few bones. But they left something behind. The thick femur. That's what you're here for. You pull out your chopper. It fits easily in your hand, worn smooth where your thumb always rests. You raise it high and bring it down, hard, onto the long bone. Once, twice, 3 times. Crack. The bone gives way, splintering open. You reach in and scoop out the prize. Marrow, soft and rich, glistening in the sun. This moment might not look like much, but it's the start of a revolution, one that won't just change your body, it will change your brain. Marrow is caloric gold. It's packed with fat, exactly what your growing mind needs. See, brains are greedy little organs. They consume about 20% of your body's energy, and they're picky eaters. They demand high-quality fuel, fats, proteins, and nutrients you won't get from leaves or roots. And you found it? This is the foundation of the expensive tissue hypothesis. The idea is simple. For a brain to grow, something else has to give. In your case, it's the gut. Big, complicated digestive systems are great for breaking down tough plants, but they require energy now being redirected to your brain. Your smaller gut works just fine, thanks to the high-quality foods your tools help you access. It's a biological trade-off. Less digestion, more cognition. You're not just getting smarter by accident, you're evolving around your menu. But let's not pretend this new lifestyle is easy. You are still not a top predator. Far from it. You're a scavenger, an opportunist, picking your way through what the stronger hunters leave behind. You need good timing, clever thinking, and a whole lot of nerve. You're often interrupted mid-meal by a leopard's growl or the glint of a hyena's teeth. You don't fight. You flee. And yet, that strategy works. Because scavenging rewards the observant, the social, the communicative. You and your band rely on subtle cues. A glance, a grunt, a gesture. You point. You wait. You learn to read each other's intentions. This is the birthplace of collaboration. Of language, even, if only in its earliest form. Let's take a moment to admire your tools again. The Alduin toolkit isn't fancy, but it's effective. You've learned how to flake off razor-sharp edges for slicing hide. You've discovered that thicker flakes work better for muscle. Heavy cores are perfect for smashing bone. These are no longer just rocks. They're specialized instruments, chosen and shaped with purpose. You know where to find good stone. You remember where the water holes are. You predict the patterns of migration and follow the vultures like an airborne GPS system. That's not just instinct. That's learning. That's strategy. And then, another leap. You are now Homo erectus. It's been nearly 500,000 years since your days as habilis, and a lot has changed. Your legs are long and powerful. You walk with a smooth, upright gait. Your body is taller, leaner, better suited to long-distance travel. And your brain? It's doubled in size. You're carrying the same Alduin toolkit, but now some of your peers are experimenting with new designs. You're about to invent the Aculean hand axe, a story for later. For now, what matters is that feedback loop we mentioned earlier. Bigger brains mean better tools. Better tools mean more food. More food fuels even bigger brains. And so the cycle spins faster and faster. But here's the kicker. Brain size isn't everything. It's also about what you do with it. And what you're doing now is revolutionary. Because you're not just wandering. You're planning. You're seeking out carcasses with precision. You're dividing tasks among group members. Someone watches for predators. Someone breaks bone. Someone feeds the children. You don't think of it this way, but you are forming the early outlines of what we'll one day call society. And that society begins to spread. Because this new body, this long-legged, long-striding form, is built not for sprinting like a cheetah, but for endurance. You can walk for hours, days. You can run your prey to exhaustion if you need to. You are becoming a nomad. You've already left footprints far beyond your ancestral home. Fossils of Homo erectus have been found in Georgia, Indonesia, even China. But we'll come to that soon. Right now, back in Africa, the air is dry. The sky is red with dust. You sit with your group near a river's edge, scraping flesh from a scavenged antelope. A child nearby mimics your motion with a pebble. An elder hands you a different flake, sharper. The marrow drips warm onto your hand. You don't know it, but inside your skull, changes are already underway. Neural connections multiplying. Memory centers expanding. Prefrontal cortex blossoming with potential. You're not just surviving anymore, you're building momentum. Soon your feet will carry you out of Africa, but you won't be drifting aimlessly. This time, you'll move with purpose. And wherever you go, your hands will carry a toolkit, your belly a new kind of hunger, and your brain a fire waiting to ignite. Your feet hit the sand first. It's cool and soft beneath you, the wind tugging gently at your hair as you stare out at an unfamiliar horizon. Behind you lies Africa, the only world your ancestors have ever known. Before you stretches the Levant, with its strange scents, strange animals and strange trees. You pause for a moment, then you step forward. You are Homo erectus. and you are the first of your kind to leave the birthplace of humanity. This journey doesn't feel historic. It doesn't feel epic. It feels normal. You're following the herds, just like your parents did. Food is scarcer than it used to be, so you move. Slowly. Over generations. No one packs their bags or says goodbye. But before long, your children are born in a different land. They grow up never having seen the African plains. They belong to a new world now. The route you've taken might have been through the Nile corridor, northward, shaded by riverbanks and papyrus. Or maybe you crossed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, back when the waters were lower and the journey seemed a little less suicidal. Historians still argue which path you chose first. Frankly, you're too busy not starving to care about the debate. What matters is that you've arrived, and you're adapting. Your body is a marvel. Long legs, arched feet, spring-loaded ankles. Your posture is fully upright, your stride easy and efficient. You can travel farther in a day than your Australopithecine ancestors could in a week. You're not fast like a lion, but you can endure. You are the original long-distance runner. And that, weirdly enough, is one of your greatest evolutionary superpowers. You settle where there's food, water, shelter. You learn new plants, new seasons. You test unknown fruits. Sometimes with disastrous results. You track unfamiliar animals. You make mistakes, but you adapt. That's what you do best. At Dmanisi, in what we now call Georgia, you leave your mark. Archaeologists will one day uncover your bones. Skulls with smaller brains than expected, teeth worn down from years of chewing tough meat and fibrous roots. But they'll also find evidence of care, an elderly individual missing most of their teeth, clearly fed and protected by others long after they could fend for themselves. Compassion, even then. Farther east, in what is now Indonesia, you become Java Man. You cross rivers, traverse jungles, and carve out a life on islands that echo with the cries of strange birds. In China, near Zhoukoudian, you make camp in caves that shelter you from freezing winters. Here, you are known as Peking Man. And yes, if you're keeping track, you now live on 3 different continents. Not bad for a species without a passport or Google Maps. And you do all this with the same old toolkit. Flakes and choppers, occasionally upgraded but fundamentally unchanged. No hand axes out here. That beautiful Apulian craftsmanship? It rarely shows up east of India. This absence puzzles modern scientists. They call the divide the Mobius line, an invisible boundary where advanced tool culture seems to vanish. Why? No one's quite sure. Maybe the raw materials were different. Maybe it was cultural drift. Or maybe, just maybe, some groups of Homo erectus weren't ready for the next leap. Evolution doesn't run on a schedule. Still, even with basic tools, your adaptability is astounding. You survive cold and heat, forest and savanna. You figure out how to hunt wild pigs in Java and how to scavenge deer in the Caucasus. You learn to dig tubers, to track elephants, to avoid tigers. You are curious, cautious, clever, and increasingly cooperative. Because let's be honest, you're not conquering the world solo. You move in groups, tight bands of kin and allies. Together, you carry the elderly, guard the fire, share the meat, and teach your young. You are slowly weaving something new. Culture. The beginnings of tradition. Of memory passed not just in genes, but in gestures and habits. Your mind is more than instinct now. It's beginning to imagine things. Routes, seasons, dangers not yet arrived. And when you chip away at a stone, You're not just reacting. You're planning. You're seeing a shape that doesn't exist yet. You are a sculptor in training. And back in Africa, something extraordinary is brewing. Other hominins have remained behind. They didn't follow you out. Not yet. But they're watching, learning, improving. And while you roam wide with your trusty flakes, they're perfecting a new tool. A symmetrical, beautiful teardrop-shaped device that will one day come to symbolize all of human prehistory. The hand axe. It's not here yet. Not in your hands. But the idea is forming. The whispers of more refined thought are echoing through the campsites of Africa. Soon, stone will no longer just be broken. It will be designed. But for now, you walk. The wind is at your back. The stars shift slightly in the sky, unfamiliar but comforting. You clutch your worn chopper, your fire flickering behind you, and set off into the next valley. You've crossed a continent, and you didn't even mean to. That's how history begins sometimes. You sit by the edge of a stream, the sun warm on your shoulders. The water chuckles over the rocks beside you. In your lap rests a heavy, oval stone, smooth, fine-grained, and dense. In your right hand, you grip a hammerstone. You're not hungry. You're not in danger. You're not even rushed. You're here to create something. You are Homo erectus, but a different kind than before. You've evolved slowly and subtly over hundreds of thousands of years. Your hands are stronger, more precise. Your mind more deliberate. You aren't just surviving anymore. You are thinking ahead, visualizing, practicing. You rotate the stone in your hand, examining its curves, its ridges. Then you strike. Not randomly, intentionally. A flake comes off, then another. You flip it, angle it, strike again. You're shaping it, coaxing it. What you're making isn't just sharp. It's symmetrical, teardrop-shaped, balanced, and beautiful. This is the Aculean hand axe. You've made a Swiss Army knife for the Stone Age. You can butcher animals with it, scrape hides, dig for roots, chop wood, and hammer bones. It's multi-purpose, durable, and if you're lucky, reusable. But what really sets it apart isn't the function, it's the form. Because this tool requires something new from your brain. A mental blueprint. You don't just chip randomly and hope for the best. You picture the final shape in your mind before you begin. You follow a sequence, step by step. That's executive function, a trait tied to your developing prefrontal cortex. You're not improvising. You're planning. It takes time. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of precise strikes. If you mess up midway, the symmetry is gone. The tool becomes just another rock. So you slow down, breathe, adjust your angle, strike again. That rhythm, that patience, that intention. This is where cognition begins to show its teeth. And what's more curious, many of these hand axes, the most perfect, balanced, flawless ones, have never been used. No chips, no wear, no blood residue. They're buried pristine, left behind as if for someone else to find. Why? Historians still argue whether these immaculate tools were actually functional or if they meant something more. Were they status symbols? Ancient calling cards? Did you make them to impress a mate? A rival? A future self? Was this our first taste of aesthetic judgment? Of making something not because we need it, but because it feels good to make it well? One theory says these were costly signals, the prehistoric equivalent of showing off a sports car. If you could afford the time, skill, and raw material to craft the perfect hand axe, it meant you were clever, resourceful, and a good provider. Which apparently was extremely hot in the lower Paleolithic dating scene. Another theory is even more radical. Maybe these tools had symbolic value. Maybe, just maybe, they were art. You wouldn't call it that, not consciously. But something in you craves balance, symmetry, beauty. Something whispers that this shape is right. And that whisper may be the earliest echo of what will one day become painting, music, language, poetry. And yet, not all humans embraced the hand axe. To the east of northern India, they vanish. This mysterious boundary is known as the Mobius line. West of it, in Africa and Europe, hand axes dominate. East of it, across much of Asia, you're back to the simpler tools of the older one style. Was it a resource issue? Cultural preference? A separate tradition? Or maybe hand axes just never caught on among some traveling groups. Trends don't always go global. Still, wherever they're made, hand axes remain remarkably consistent for over 1 million years. Think about that. Your ancestors had a favorite design and stuck with it longer than any modern tech company has kept a logo. And why not? It worked. It was elegant, and it was yours. This new level of skill doesn't exist in isolation. It shows up in other areas of your life, too. Your hunting becomes more coordinated. You wait in ambush, flank prey, strategize. You know how to dig a pit or lead a herd toward a cliff. Your communication improves. Not language, not yet, but gestures, tones, facial expressions. You begin to share ideas, stories even, around the fire. Ah, yes, the fire. You don't make it yourself. Not yet. But you guard it carefully. You carry embers in bark bundles. You feed it with twigs and dried dung. It keeps you warm, scares predators, lights the dark. And someday soon, someone in your lineage will figure out how to summon it with nothing but wood, friction, and patience. But even now, it changes your life. Because around that fire, you have time. Time to sit, to think, to plan, to teach. You show your child how to shape a hand axe, not by lecture, but by demonstration. You place their hand on the core, guide the first blow. They flinch. The flake pops free. They smile. That's how tradition is born. Not with words, but with movement. And as the sun dips low behind the trees, you stare at your newest creation. The edges glint in the light. It's sharp enough to cut flesh, tough enough to break bone. But it's also beautiful, balanced. It feels right in your hand. You don't know it, but this object you've made will last longer than your bones. Someone, tens of thousands of years from now, will dig it up, turn it over in their hand and whisper, "They were clever. They were like us." But for now, you stand, tuck it into your pouch, and move on. A storm is building on the horizon. Night is falling fast. And soon, you'll need something even more powerful than stone. Soon, you will tame fire itself. The night is no longer black. It dances, it crackles, it glows. You are sitting in a circle of light, your legs pulled close to your chest, your eyes wide. Around you, the shadows pulse and sway, cast by flames that leap and twist in the dry wood you've stacked with care. The darkness beyond the fire is absolute. It hums with threat, but here you are safe. For the first time, you are not ruled by the night. You have claimed a piece of it for yourself. You have fire. You didn't start it, not yet. A lightning strike gave it to you. A tree burned. You rushed to the embers with bark and courage, fed it, sheltered it, carried it like a living thing. You've done this before. Your group knows the signs. Smoke on the horizon, animals fleeing in a wave. You race to it every time. Because fire changes everything. Let's be clear. This isn't just about staying warm or cooking a decent antelope roast. This is a species-level upgrade. A slow, dangerous, transformative revolution. In South Africa's Wonderwerk cave, buried deep in layers of ash nearly 1 million years old, archaeologists have found traces of this power. Burned bones, singed sediment, fire deep inside a cave where no natural flame could have wandered on its own. This is not lightning. This is you, keeping a flame alive, feeding it, protecting it, using it. This is not just warmth, it's control. And control of fire changes your relationship to the world in 4 massive ways. First, food. Cooking is essentially pre-digestion. You're doing outside your body what your gut used to do inside. Fire breaks down fibers, softens meat, kills parasites, and unlocks calories. A tough root that used to take hours of chewing now melts in your mouth. A bone with barely edible gristle becomes a feast. This boosts your energy intake massively, which, as we know, is exactly what your brain craves. You're feeding a neural furnace now. That small leap in nutrition is a huge step in evolution. Second, protection. Before fire, night was a death sentence. Big cats hunted by smell and silence. You slept in trees or clung to cliffs, never quite at ease. But now, you can sleep on the ground. The flicker of flame, the smoke, the heat. It drives predators back. They watch from the edge of the dark, but they don't cross it. You've drawn a line they won't pass. You've made a perimeter. Third, warmth. You're not limited to warm valleys anymore. You can survive cold nights, wind-blown plains, even high-altitude caves. You're mobile in a way no other primate is. Fire allows you to expand, to adapt to harsh new climates, to carry your home with you, not in stone or wood, but in embers. And fourth, perhaps most profoundly, fire creates time. Before fire, when the sun went down, so did your day. You ate quickly, huddled together, slept fitfully. But now, you stay awake. You sit together, staring at the flames. The light dances in your eyes. You share meat, stories, maybe even dreams. You laugh. You mimic. You remember. The fire becomes your first classroom, your first stage, your first confessional booth. You don't have language, not fully, but your gestures become more complex, your vocalizations more nuanced. Around the fire, your brain stretches its wings. You experiment with sounds, with rhythm, with imitation. Laughter is shared. Knowledge is passed down. A child learns how to sharpen a flake. An elder hums a tune, tapping rhythm on a stone. A mother shows how to wrap a wound with moss and bark. Culture begins to crackle into life. It's not all poetic, though. Fire is also terrifying. You've watched a campsite vanish in flames. You've felt your own hair sizzle. You've seen what happens when the wind shifts, when dry grass ignites, when a spark jumps to the wrong place. Fire is alive. You don't own it. You negotiate with it. You're not its master. You're its uneasy partner. But that danger? That's part of the lesson. Because managing fire teaches you discipline. You can't just wander off. Someone must tend the flame, feed it, shield it from rain, pass it carefully to the next traveler. It becomes a shared responsibility. And shared responsibilities, well, they're the glue of civilization. Soon you'll figure out how to make it. Not just preserve it, but birth it. It might happen by accident. Two stones clashing, a stick spun fast in a notch, creating heat and smoke. You notice. You experiment. You fail, over and over. But then, success. The first spark. The first gasp of flame. It's not a celebration. It's reverence. A whisper to the gods, even if you don't yet know what a god is. Your tools begin to improve, too. In the flickering light, you can work longer, shape hand axes with more precision, bind spears with resin and sinew. You might even start carving, decorating. A few scratches on bone, maybe just idle marks. But perhaps something more. Perhaps a symbol. A message. The first hesitant steps toward art. Fire gives you the space to imagine. It lets your body rest while your mind wanders. And when the flames burn low and the embers glow red, you curl up beside the warmth. You close your eyes not in fear, but in comfort. There's a world beyond the firelight. Yes, but tonight, it is held at bay. Tomorrow you'll wake to smoke-scented hair and glowing coals. Tomorrow you'll build new tools, hunt new prey, teach new children. But tonight, under the stars, you are something no other animal dares to be. You are awake in the dark. The wind smells like horses. You crouch low in the reeds, your knees wet from the marshy ground. The herd is close now, dozens of wild horses, their nostrils flaring, tails twitching at unseen flies. They haven't spotted you yet. Not you, or the others hidden along the edge of the clearing. You can see the glint of spear tips through the brush, just barely. Everyone is waiting, watching. Then a hand signal. Silent, subtle. The time is now. You rise, not alone, but as part of a coordinated burst of motion. Spears raised, feet pounding, voices raised in a sudden, terrifying cry. The horses panic. They scatter, hooves thundering over the soft earth, except for the few you've corralled between the humans and the lake. They run the only way they can, straight into a trap. You are Homo heidelbergensis, and this is not scavenging. This is not luck. This is a hunt, planned, rehearsed, and executed with precision. You've become something new. It's about 400,000 years ago, near what will one day be Schöningen, Germany. In your hands, you carry a marvel of engineering. A 6-foot spear carved from the trunk of a spruce tree. Its weight is balanced, its point fire-hardened to a gleaming edge. It didn't happen by accident. Someone selected the wood, stripped the bark, shaped it for hours, and held it to the flames just long enough to strengthen, not burn it. That takes knowledge, memory, craft. These are not sharpened sticks. These are weapons, and they prove something profound. You are no longer simply reacting to your world. You are mastering it. Your kind appeared around 700,000 years ago, bridging the gap between Homo erectus and the species that will come next, Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens. But you are more than just a transitional fossil. You are a milestone, a fork in the evolutionary road. Your brain is large, nearly as big as a modern human's. Your body is strong and adaptable. You spread across continents, Africa, Europe, parts of Asia. You are resourceful, social, and increasingly complex. And nowhere is that complexity more haunting than in a cave in Spain. It's called Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. Tucked deep within the Atapuerca Mountains, it holds the remains of at least 28 individuals, all Homo heidelbergensis. The bones are old, around 430,000 years, and there are a lot of them. Not scattered, not weathered, but intentionally placed. You didn't just fall in. There's only one way in or out of the pit. A narrow vertical shaft 15 meters down. Carrying one body down would be hard. Carrying 28? That's effort. That's intention. And then there's the pink hand axe. Among all the bones lies a single, beautifully crafted tool made of rosy quartzite. It's unlike the others. Unused, unworn, almost delicate. Researchers call it Excalibur, because apparently even archaeologists get poetic sometimes. But the question remains, why was it there? Historians still argue whether this was an early funeral rite, a place of reverence, or just a freak landslide. But the fact that you left a gift, a deliberately made object, suggests something else. A glimmer of ritual, of meaning, of belief. Maybe you didn't just bury the dead. Maybe you mourned them. Maybe you believed in something beyond. There are other signs, too. In your campsites, we see circles of stones, perhaps windbreaks, perhaps foundations, hearths carefully built and rebuilt, tool caches organized by type and size. These aren't the random habits of instinct. They're systems, patterns, culture. You work with fire, not just to stay warm, but to process material. You harden wood. You cook roots. You roast meat. You might even be using pitch, pine resin distilled over fire, to bind spearheads to shafts. That's early chemistry. That's experimentation. Your tools are better than ever. Your hand axes are thinner, more refined. Some of you are experimenting with flakes and prepared cores, early whispers of the technologies to come. You teach your children. You learn from your elders. You know which stone makes the best edge and where to find it. But your greatest tool isn't in your hands. It's your group. Hunting a horse with a stick doesn't work unless you trust the person beside you. Unless you know they'll hold the line, shout when it's time, strike when it matters. You must coordinate, anticipate. That demands communication. Something more than grunts and gestures. Maybe not language as we know it, but something close. You're not just surviving as individuals, you're thriving as a community. That cooperation extends to care. You've found ways to support the sick, the wounded, the elderly. Your group moves together, shelters together, eats together. When one member falters, the others help. You don't have a word for it yet, but the emotion is real. Compassion. So tonight, you sit around your fire, a successful hunt behind you. Children gnaw on roasted bone. Elders retell the tale with broad gestures and proud grunts. Someone sharpens a spear in the flickering light. Another stares into the flames, lost in thought. You are not yet human in the modern sense. But the pieces are here. The planning, the tools, the memory, the mourning. And soon, your lineage will split. One branch will remain in Europe and become stockier, colder climate specialists, the Neanderthals. The other will stay in Africa, growing lighter, more gracile, and eventually more imaginative. But both will carry your legacy, because you, Homo heidelbergensis, are not a primitive shadow. You are the thinker, the hunter, the ancestor. The cave is quiet, but not empty. You walk carefully, your bare feet padded with animal hide, your steps respectful. The body lies in the center of the shallow pit. An old man, his bones gnarled, joints swollen, his jaw nearly toothless. He must have been in pain for years. But he lived. Someone must have helped him chew, kept him warm, carried him when the snows were deep. That someone was you, or your brother, or your mate. It doesn't matter. You don't leave your people behind. Now, you bend low and tuck his knees to his chest, gently, as if he's only sleeping. Around the grave, the group is silent, watching, waiting. You sprinkle dust over him, maybe place a stone, or a flower, or something you wore, just for him. You are a Neanderthal. You've heard the myths, probably. Not you, of course, but us. In the modern world, people once thought of you as brutish, dumb, hunched, club-wielding cavemen with vacant stares and permanent grunts. That's what early reconstruction suggested. Awkward, slow, savage. But they were wrong. They judged you by your bones, badly misinterpreted ones at that, and ignored everything else. In truth, you are intelligent, complex, skilled, and perhaps more emotionally rich than anyone gave you credit for. You lived across Europe and Western Asia from roughly 4,000 to 40,000 years ago. You survived ice ages, glaciers, bitter cold, and you did it well. Your body is built for the chill. Broad chest, short limbs, stocky, powerful frame. That's not clumsiness. It's insulation. You carry heat better than any hominin before you. Your nose is wide, built to warm, frozen air before it reaches your lungs. Your muscles are thick, your bones dense. You are a survival machine, but not a cold one. Let's talk tools. You don't just bash things with rocks. You use the Levallois technique, a complex multi-step method for preparing a stone core and striking off flakes with predictable shapes and sizes. It's like prehistoric 3D printing. Efficient, standardized. You shape scrapers, points, notches. You haft them onto wooden shafts with animal sinew and birch tar. Yes, tar. You figured out how to distill pitch from bark, likely by accident, and then repeated the process on purpose. That's early chemistry. That's brilliant. You hunt in coordinated groups. Big game. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison. You plan ambushes, drive herds into traps, and work together to bring them down. You don't waste much. You process hides into clothing, fitted and warm, thanks to awls and bone needles. You prepare meat and fat for the cold months. You likely store food, too, in pits or cool caves. You are not chasing dinner. You are strategizing your survival. And you care. The old man of La Chapelle aux Saints, the one you just buried. He lived for years without teeth, without the ability to chew meat or forage tough roots. He was cared for, fed, protected. Same for the injured man in Shanidar Cave, Iraq. His skull was crushed, his arm withered. But he lived for decades. In this brutal ice age, the only way that happens is if someone else steps in and stays. You know pain, and you recognize it in others. There's something else you understand too, something harder to define. Symbolism. At Brunicle Cave in France, far from any daylight, you stacked broken stalagmites into deliberate circles. Not randomly, carefully. This was deep inside the earth, where no one lived. So why? It wasn't shelter. It wasn't food. Was it ritual? Art? A test of fear? Historians still argue, and maybe they always will, but the intent is undeniable. You made something that didn't need to be made, and you did it in darkness, where no one would see, except those you brought with you. At other sites, you collect eagle talons, clawed, beautiful, and wear them as pendants. You gather feathers from raptors, piercing them, perhaps weaving them into hair or clothing. You use red ochre, not just to stain tools, but to mark bodies. Maybe faces. Maybe even walls. You're not just surviving anymore. You're expressing. And yes, you bury your dead. Not always. Not everywhere. But often enough, and deliberately enough, that it can't be ignored. Bodies placed in pits, limbs arranged, objects left behind. You may not have had gods, but you had grief. You had memory. So what happened to you? You were strong, skilled, smart. Why did you vanish? Well, you didn't entirely. Modern genetics has shown that almost everyone alive today carries a little piece of you, especially those of European or Asian descent. Around 1 to 4% of your DNA lives on. When modern humans arrived from Africa and met you, it wasn't just conflict. It was contact, interbreeding. Some of your children survived, and now they're reading bedtime history scripts on the internet. Still, your world changed. The Ice Age shifted. Forests replaced grasslands. Resources grew more scattered. And modern humans brought new tools, new tactics, maybe even new diseases. It wasn't a war. It was a slow eclipse. But we should be clear. You didn't fail. You thrived for hundreds of thousands of years. Longer than we've been around so far. And you left behind more than bones and tools. You left behind a legacy of intelligence, adaptability, compassion, and mystery. So tonight, we remember you not as a brute, but as a brother. Not as a failure, but as a fellow traveler. And as we leave your icy homeland, we turn our gaze southward, back to the continent where it all began. Because there, under warmer skies, something is stirring. A new mind, a new kind of body. A species with a rounder skull, a curious eye, and a brain wired not just for survival, but for imagination. Your cousins are about to arrive, and they are us. You kneel in the dry soil, your fingers stained with red ochre. The chunk of mineral in your palm is rough, the color deep, a clay red that smudges easily and leaves streaks across your fingertips. You've ground it carefully on a flat rock, mixed it with marrow fat and ash, and now you're applying it to a smooth shell. It's not for protection, it's not for food, it's for something else entirely. You don't know it yet, but you are drawing the first abstract line. You are Homo sapiens, but not quite as we know you now. Your face looks familiar, your brow less pronounced than the Neanderthals, your chin more defined. But your skull is still long, not yet fully rounded. Your brain is already large, though, and something inside it is changing. We are at Jebel Irhoud, Morocco. The year? Roughly 300,000 BCE. You are one of the earliest known members of our species, and you are part of a slow, complex, pan-African process. Not a sudden spark, not a single Eden. The old story of modern humans arising in one specific region of East Africa around 200,000 years ago is no longer the full picture. Fossils like yours, far to the northwest, tell a more tangled tale. Early populations of Homo sapiens likely emerged in different parts of Africa at different times, interbreeding and migrating over millennia. Evolution, it turns out, doesn't care for clean boundaries. But what made you different? Not your tools. At least not at first. You still use flake tools similar to those your Neanderthal cousins crafted. Levallois cores, sharpened scrapers, the usual suspects. It's not what's in your hands that sets you apart. It's what's happening inside your head. Your brain isn't just bigger. It's rewiring. Becoming more globular. Rounder. This subtle shift changes everything. It reorganizes key areas of the brain responsible for memory, language, and social understanding. You start seeing the world in patterns, in connections, in stories, and slowly, it begins to show. Far to the south, on the cliffs above the Indian Ocean, you make camp at Pinnacle Point. It's around 164,000 years ago. Here, you regularly harvest shellfish, roast them over fire, and dip into the rich coastal pantry. This diet, abundant in omega-3 fatty acids and other brain-fueling nutrients, may play a role in what's coming next. Because something new begins to emerge, symbolic behavior. You pick up ochre, not just as a stain, but as a medium. You grind it, mix it, apply it to shells, to tools, maybe even your skin. And in Blombos Cave, just a few hundred kilometers away, you etch it. On slabs of ochre dating from 75,000 to 100,000 years ago, you scratch deliberate patterns, crosshatches, grids, intersecting lines. These aren't doodles. These are designs. Historians still argue whether they represent meaning or simply decoration. But either way, they're abstract, intentional. They mean something to someone. You don't stop there. You take small sea snail shells, Nasarius kraussianus, and pierce them one by one to string into necklaces. Not for warmth, not for utility, but for display, for identity, for culture. This is the beginning of art, of adornment, of self-expression, and maybe of language. The anatomy is already there. Your vocal tract is capable of complex sounds. Your brain can process syntax, metaphor, even tone. Whether you're speaking in words or elaborate gestures, the effect is the same. Shared thought. You can describe something that isn't here. You can talk about the past, warn of the future, tell someone what's inside your mind. That is revolutionary. You're also starting to plan differently, to organize your space. At Blombos, you create a workshop, a literal paint kit. You mix ochre with crushed bone, charcoal, and fat in abalone shells. You store your tools. You reuse your mixing stones. This isn't random behavior. It's a production line. You're thinking in systems now. You still hunt. You still gather. But the rhythm of your life is shifting. You return to the same sites, season after season. You dig storage pits. You leave offerings. You carve grooves into bone, not for function, but for counting, or marking time, or remembering. You're becoming cultural. You still share the earth with others. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, even some lingering Homo erectus in remote regions. But you are different. You don't just adapt to environments, you imagine alternatives. You don't just react, you anticipate. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to see yourself as part of a story. A group member, a child of ancestors, a parent of descendants. And that mindset sets the stage for the next leap. Because the world is changing again. Temperatures are rising, ice is melting, forests shift, deserts breathe. And in 1,000 quiet moments, across 1,000 generations, the urge begins to stir, to move, to leave. And this time, it's not scavenging that pulls you. It's curiosity. You've looked over the hills, out across the waves, into the sky. And you've wondered what else is out there. Your brain is ready. Your body is capable. Your imagination is restless. So now you will do what your ancestors did before you, what Homo erectus once attempted. But you'll do it differently. You'll build rafts, watch the stars, tell stories to prepare each other, paint symbols on cave walls before you go. You're not fleeing, you're exploring. And as you step onto the sand, the sea behind you, the unknown ahead, you carry something no other species ever has. A symbolic mind, a dreaming mind, a human mind. You squint into the wind, the salt stinging your face. Behind you lies Africa, its warm cliffs and ochre-painted caves now a memory. Before you, the water stretches wide, shimmering under the morning sun. The tide is low, the strait narrow, but still, it is water. Deep, mysterious, unsteady. And you are about to cross it. You lash together logs with fiber, pile dried meat and hide bundles. Children cling to their mothers. Elders lean on spears worn smooth by generations of walking. You launch, paddling slowly, silently, into the unknown. You are Homo sapiens, and this is the second great journey. The first wave, by Homo erectus nearly 2 million years ago, was unintentional, a slow trickle following herds and seasons. But now, you cross with intention, with stories, with fire. This journey begins around 70,000 years ago, and it will be the most successful expansion in the history of life on Earth. Within a few thousand generations, your descendants will populate every habitable corner of the planet. Your first major route is known today as the Southern Dispersal, a beachcomber's path hugging the coastlines of Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. It's a genius move. The sea provides food year-round: shellfish, seaweed, fish, and seabirds. Your diet is stable, your movement efficient. You can walk for hundreds of miles and always find something familiar to eat. You leave behind shell middens, fish hooks carved from bone, and the first signs of watercraft. You begin to live with the sea, not just near it. And then, the leap. You cross into Australia. Yes, Australia. A land filled with creatures you've never imagined. Marsupial lions, giant flightless birds, and Diprotodon, a wombat the size of a car. Getting there means crossing dozens of miles of open ocean. It requires coordinated rafts, group navigation, and the courage to paddle toward a horizon you cannot see. You make it. By around 65,000 years ago, you've arrived on the lost supercontinent of Sahul, a landmass that once connected Australia, New Guinea, and Tasmania. Here you settle, hunt, paint, and thrive. You also leave footprints, not just figurative ones, literal ones. Preserved in ancient lake beds, they show family groups moving together. Small children walking beside tall adults. And soon after, they leave another mark: extinction. Within a few millennia, many of the great Australian megafauna are gone. Some vanish with climate change. But others? Their bones lie beside your butchered fires. The truth is hard to face, but it's part of your story. This is the first time, though not the last, that humans change an entire ecosystem simply by arriving. Farther north, your kin move inland and east into the depths of Asia. You climb mountains, cross deserts, adapt to jungles and steppe. And there, in Siberia's frozen caves, you meet the Denisovans. They are different, yet familiar. Broad-boned, sturdy, probably fair-skinned. You don't fight. You interbreed. Your DNA mingles. And in time, you carry their genes with you. Modern Tibetans still carry a Denisovan adaptation for high-altitude breathing, a ghostly gift from a vanished cousin. You continue into China, across the forests of Southeast Asia, up into the Korean peninsula, down into the islands of Indonesia. You push, rest, settle, move again. And eventually, you reach Europe. It's about 45,000 years ago. The continent is cold and already occupied by the Neanderthals. You've met them before, maybe even long before now. But this time, something is different. You bring new tools, blades, not flakes, bone needles, dyes, ornaments. You bring language, possibly richer, faster, more fluid. And you bring imagination, symbols, songs, ideas that spread faster than fire. The Neanderthals hold on, for a time. You live side by side in some regions, trade, perhaps, or mimic each other's tool styles. In others, there is conflict. But in many places, the line between you blurs. Children are born with mixed features. Their legacy survives. In you. Because that's the great twist. You didn't replace your cousins. You absorbed them. Neanderthal DNA still lives in modern humans, especially in those from Europe and Asia. Denisovan traces too, especially in Melanesians and Aboriginal Australians. You didn't conquer the world alone. You brought pieces of others with you. Woven into your genes is a record of every encounter, every shared meal, every whispered story between strangers who realized they weren't so different after all. And behind you, back in Africa, others remain. Human populations that never left, who evolved and innovated in parallel. Humanity isn't a single river. It's a braided stream, full of twists, crossings and eddies. But you are the most widespread version. And with each step, you change the world. You paint symbols on cave walls, leave footprints in volcanic ash. Your children grow up under strange stars, in lands your grandparents couldn't imagine. Your voice takes on new sounds. Your body shifts with climate and food. You build boats, bury beads, stack stones into circles for reasons no one can explain. You begin to imagine not just where you are, but where you came from, and where you might go. And so you arrive in Ice Age Europe, your mind rich with memory and myth. The animals are huge, the winter long, the dark, deep. But you're not afraid. You carry fire. You carry stories. And now, you will paint. The torch flickers in your hand, casting long shadows across the rock walls. You are deep inside the cave. So deep, that no sunlight has ever touched this place. The air is cool, damp, and utterly still, as if the earth itself is holding its breath. You press one hand to the wall, steadying yourself. The stone is cold, smooth, waiting. Then you begin to paint. You are Homo sapiens, fully modern in body and mind, and this is the Upper Paleolithic, the Ice Age in full bloom. Outside, the land is harsh. Glaciers grind across continents, mammoths trudge through snow, and the wind sings through empty valleys. But in here, in this cathedral of stone, you are doing something astonishing. You are making art. The wall in front of you is not a diary, not a hunting manual. It is a world. You draw lions, horses, woolly rhinos. Herds gallop across the stone, their legs blurred with motion. Some you outline with charcoal, others with ochre and manganese. You shade, you layer, you suggest depth. When the torchlight dances, the animals seem to move. This is Chauvet Cave, southern France. It's around 36,000 years ago, but the story echoes across Europe. In Lascaux, 17,000 years later, you return underground and do it again. This time, bigger, more detailed, more daring. The Great Hall of the Bulls stretches before you. Dozens of animals painted in sweeping curves, horns overlapping, some towering 6 feet tall. And the question rings out, why? Historians still argue whether this was magic, religion, memory, or simply beauty for beauty's sake. Was it a way to summon game, a record of spirit visions, or perhaps a classroom, a visual encyclopedia for young hunters? You'll never say. Not with words. But one thing is certain. This is not survival. This is expression. Your mind is no longer just calculating, planning, storing facts. It is imagining. It is projecting. And then there's the music. In caves across Germany, you carve flutes. Yes, flutes. From bird bones and mammoth ivory. With careful hands and sharp tools, you drill finger holes, notch mouthpieces. These are not crude whistles. They are tuned instruments. Some are pentatonic. You play melodies that float through the cavern air, bouncing off stone, echoing in chambers where you paint. You are not alone in your head anymore. You're sharing what you feel, with sound, with image, with movement. Outside the caves, your creativity continues. You carve small figurines from stone, ivory, and antler. One of the most famous is the Venus of Willendorf, a tiny female form with wide hips, full breasts, and no visible face. She's 30,000 years old, and she is not alone. Dozens of these so-called Venus figures are found from France to Russia. Are they fertility idols? Self-portraits? Religious symbols? Early pornography? We don't know, but they reveal something fundamental. You are starting to abstract the human form, to shape it to match ideas, not just appearances. And then there's the technology. The humble bone needle enters your life, and with it, a revolution. Now, instead of draping hides over your shoulders, you stitch tailored clothing. Fitted, warm, layered. You can survive colder climates. You can move with ease. You are no longer just adapting to your environment. You are engineering your way through it. You hunt with the atlatl, a spear thrower that adds power and distance. You fish with barbed harpoons. You build shelters of mammoth bone and turf, lined with furs, heated with fire pits. You live not just in caves, but in open plains, forests, river valleys. Your culture flourishes, not just in Europe, but everywhere. In Indonesia, you paint handprints and wild pigs on cave walls. In Siberia, you carve tiny animal figurines from ivory. In Africa, you decorate ostrich eggshells with geometric patterns. In South Asia, you engrave rocks with spirals and lines. Everywhere you go, you leave behind meaning. You name places, you tell stories, you teach your children not just how to survive, but why. You may not write, but you remember. And memory, shared, repeated, ritualized, is history. Your world is not silent. It is filled with drumbeats, chants, whistles, laughter around fires, weeping at graves, murmured prayers to unseen forces. Because now, for the first time, you don't just observe life, you try to understand it. And in doing so, you build the foundations of everything to come. You carry your knowledge across continents, through snowstorms and droughts, over rivers and through forests. You decorate your tools, your bodies, your dead. You give names, symbols, songs. And still, there is danger, because the world is entering its coldest, most brutal phase yet. The ice sheets are at their peak. Forests disappear. Deserts expand. Herds dwindle. The mammoths retreat. You must adapt again, or fade. But you are not the same being who once chipped a flake from a stone in Ethiopia. You are human now, in mind, in form, in soul. And as the wind howls across the empty tundra, your fire burns steady. Because you have something no storm can extinguish. You have imagination. The wind never stops. It slices across the plains, dry and razor-sharp, pulling at the fur draped across your shoulders. Your eyelashes are crusted with ice. Your breath fogs and freezes. Around you, the land is white and endless. No trees, no cover, no color. Just snow, sky, and the howling cold. You are in what will one day be called Ukraine, around 24,000 years ago, in the heart of the last glacial maximum, the deepest freeze of the Ice Age. And you are alive. Barely. The mammoths have moved south, their tracks crusted over with snow. The rivers are locked under ice. There are no berries, no firewood, no forgiveness. But even here, in this unforgiving land, you've built something extraordinary. A home. You crouch at the entrance of your shelter, its walls made not from hide or timber, but from bone, mammoth bone. Dozens of massive skulls, femurs and tusks have been stacked and locked together, forming a dome-shaped hut. The gaps are filled with mud and turf, now frozen solid. Furs flap at the doorway. Inside, a small fire smolders, giving off more smoke than heat. It's not cozy, but it's shelter, and it is yours. At sites like Mezrich and Kostenki, these mammoth bone dwellings mark the high point of Ice Age engineering. They aren't temporary. They aren't improvised. They are designed, carefully, intelligently. You've become not just a survivor, but a builder. Outside, the landscape is silent, but it is full of life. Woolly rhinos, giant deer, reindeer, steppe bison. You track them by the shape of hoof prints in snow. You follow their droppings, listen for their snorts. Your hunting parties wear layers of stitched hides, carry spears tipped with flint, and use atlatls to hurl them farther, faster, and deadlier than ever before. You don't just chase, you ambush. You understand wind direction, herd dynamics, bottlenecks. You work as a team. You signal. You wait. And when the kill is made, you waste nothing. Meat is eaten, organs shared, hide scraped, cleaned, and sewn. Bones become tent poles, beads, tools, fuel for the fire. Even the fat is used to make light, salve wounds, or coat your skin against the wind. You store what you can't eat in the earth. Deep pits, dug into the permafrost. The first freezes. Meat stays frozen for months. You cover it with stones and snow. You mark it so others won't stumble upon it and steal. Because this world teaches caution, not just toward animals, but toward other people. The population is shrinking. The cold is relentless. Entire bands disappear. Others merge, driven together by hunger, by climate, by chance. You find ways to cooperate, but not always. Resources are few. Territory matters. Sometimes there is violence. But more often, there is sharing. You gather at central places, like Dolny Viestonic in what is now the Czech Republic. There, you trade. Stories, food, flint, antler, ochre, beads. Shells carried from the sea, hundreds of miles away. Someone brings a carving, tiny, perfect, of a lion, or a horse, or a woman. You marvel, you copy, you remember, because you still make art. Even now, especially now, when the world is coldest, your spirit burns brightest. You carve figurines from mammoth ivory and soft stone. You press symbols into clay. Yes, clay. Long before pottery is invented. You leave handprints in red and black on cave walls. You keep counting notches, repeating patterns, scratching lines whose meanings we still don't fully understand. You bury your dead with care, sometimes with goods, sometimes under slabs of mammoth bone, with red ochre sprinkled over the body like blood-tinged snow. One young boy, found near Sunghir in Russia, is buried with 13,000 ivory beads, each one carved and pierced and sewn by hand. That took thousands of hours. For a child, you're not just remembering the dead, you're honoring them. And always in the distance, there is the wind. But in certain corners of the world, where glaciers don't quite reach, southern France and Spain, the Balkans, the Caucasus, life goes on with more ease. These are the refugia, ice-free pockets where your numbers hold steady. You fish in icy rivers, snare small game, dig roots under snow. You wait for the thaw. Farther still, across a land that no longer exists, another group survives. You are in Beringia, a vast, now submerged plain that once connected Siberia to Alaska. There are no glaciers here, no mountains, just endless tundra, low vegetation, and roaming herds. For thousands of years, humans live here, isolated at the edge of the world. They hunt, they build, they carve tiny bone needles with perfect holes. They shape exquisite spear points. And eventually, when the ice finally retreats, they will move south and become the first Americans. But not yet. Because right now, the cold still reigns. The glaciers stretch down like teeth across the northern hemisphere. The sea levels have dropped over 120 meters. What was once shallow coastline is now dry land. You could walk from Ireland to France, from Russia to Alaska, from Indonesia to Australia. And you do. You move, slowly, carefully. Because nothing is stable. The climate changes fast, sometimes within a single lifetime. Forests vanish, lakes dry, herds vanish, then reappear. You adjust. Always. That is your superpower, not strength, not speed, not even fire. Flexibility. You can tan hides, dig traps, fish through ice, build shelters from bones, and sing lullabies in languages no one remembers. You are a shapeshifter, a dreamer, a survivor. And the ice is about to lose. Because soon, the world will change again. Faster, wetter, and wilder than before. The glaciers will retreat. Forests will explode into bloom. Rivers will flood the plains. The mammoths will disappear. And in this new, green, unfamiliar world, you'll need to learn everything all over again. The snow has melted. The wind, once sharp and dry, now smells of moss and wet bark. Around you, the world is alive with noise. Birds calling, leaves rustling, insects buzzing in 1,000 directions at once. You stand ankle-deep in a soft forest, the air thick with the scent of damp soil and pine. It is loud. It is green. It is confusing. You are no longer surrounded by vast herds of mammoths or open tundra stretching to the horizon. That world is gone, and in its place, forest. Dense, tangled, unpredictable. This is the Holocene warming. The glaciers have retreated. Sea levels are rising fast, carving out coastlines you'll never know existed. Valleys flood. Islands form. The land you hunted on last season is now a marsh. But you're still here. You've survived the most brutal cold in over 100,000 years. And now, you must learn to survive abundance. Welcome to the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age, a time of transition. But not one of hesitation. Because in this new world, you adapt again. As always, the open grasslands you once hunted on have given way to dense forests of oak, birch, and hazel. Big game is harder to find, harder to see, harder to kill. The reindeer are gone. The mammoths are gone. Even the woolly rhino has disappeared. In their place, red deer, wild boar, roe deer. Smaller, quicker, smarter. So you get smarter too. You hold in your hand a new kind of weapon. A bow. The shaft is curved and elegant, strung tight with sinew. The arrows are short and light, fletched with feathers, tipped with tiny stone blades, microliths, set into grooves like teeth. This is not brute force. This is finesse. Precision. You don't need to ambush a herd now. You can take down a single deer, alone, with one clean shot. And in the forest, that's what matters. Microliths are a quiet revolution. Tiny, standardized stone flakes, easier to carry, easier to replace, perfect for composite tools. You snap them into wooden handles to make knives, barbed harpoons, even fishing spears. Your toolkit isn't just lighter, it's modular. You can repair a broken weapon in minutes. You are now running the Stone Age's first multi-tool workshop. And then there's the water. With the melting ice, rivers swell, lakes form, coasts shift. The sea encroaches, swallowing ancient campsites. But instead of fleeing it, you embrace it. You become a fisher, a sailor, a water dweller. At Star Car, in what will one day be northern England, you build platforms of wood out over the lake. You drop lines with bone hooks. You set traps, weirs, woven baskets. You carve dugout canoes from tree trunks, scraping them with hot stones and ember-filled scoops. You travel on water as easily as on land now. Rivers are your highways, lakes your hunting grounds. The ocean becomes a pantry filled with mussels, clams, and fish, too swift for your ancestors to dream of catching. And with this new rhythm of life, something else changes. You slow down. Not completely. You still move with the seasons. But the groups you travel with get larger, more permanent. You return to the same lake edge each summer. Build new platforms. Repair the old ones. You leave behind tools, fire pits, garbage heaps that tell stories of long, patient living. You're not quite farming yet, but you are settling. And you're eating well. Your diet is more varied than ever. Meat, fish, nuts, berries, roots, grains, shellfish, even honey. You roast hazelnuts by the thousands. You ferment fruit into primitive alcohol. You smoke and dry meat. Your food isn't just fuel anymore. It's culture. And then, one night, something happens. A sound in the dark. A soft snarl. Movement just beyond the firelight. Your group tenses, spears in hand, but then a shape steps into view, tail wagging, ears forward. It is not a threat. It is a dog, not a wolf, not exactly. Something in between. You've seen them before, circling the edges of camp. Bold but cautious. Some chased off, others tolerated. And then, slowly, a bond formed. You share scraps. They share warmth. They alert you to danger. Help track. Help guard. This is the world's first domesticated animal. The only one to join your tribe before the farm. Long before the barn. Your dog is not livestock. It is not meat. It is family. And just like that, your camp becomes something more. A home. These changes might seem subtle, but they're foundational. You haven't planted a seed yet, but your world is preparing you. You are learning to think in cycles. You return to the same berry patches each year. You burn underbrush to encourage hazel growth. You notice where grains grow thickest. You begin to wonder, what if we didn't leave at all? The forest teaches patience. The water teaches timing. The dog teaches trust. And all of it together leads you to the edge of a decision. Because one day, the wild grasses you gather fail. A cold snap hits, or the herd doesn't return. You look at the handful of seeds in your pouch, the ones you saved. You clear a small patch of ground, scratch it open with a stick, and for the first time, not knowing what will happen, you plant. You press the seeds into the soil with your thumb, one by one. Not too deep, not too close. You've seen how they grow best, on south-facing slopes, where the wind doesn't dry them out too fast, where the water gathers in just the right places after a spring rain. You don't fully understand the mechanics of germination, of course, but you've learned something more important. Pattern. You're no longer just gathering wild grain. You're managing it. This is the beginning of everything. You are part of the Natufian culture, living in the hills of what will one day be called the Fertile Crescent, stretching across parts of modern-day Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. It's around 12,500 BCE. Your group lives in permanent stone dwellings, nestled into terraces overlooking river valleys. The houses are circular, plastered with lime, with storage pits dug into the floors. You are not quite farmers, but you're no longer foragers in the traditional sense. You return to the same wild wheat fields every season. You harvest with flint sickles, their handles worn smooth by generations of use. You grind the grain into flour with stone querns, bake flat cakes on hot rocks, and store the rest in woven baskets or clay-lined pits. But then, something shifts. A sudden cold snap, known today as the Younger Dryas, stuns your landscape. It lasts for over 1,000 years. The wild cereals wither, the climate dries, the harvest shrinks, hunger creeps in. So you gamble. You take the seeds you saved, the best ones, the plumpest, the ones that didn't sprout in storage, and you plant them closer to home. You water them, you protect them, you weed around them. And slowly, across generations, a miracle unfolds. Your wild grain becomes domesticated, not by accident, but by unconscious selection. The grains that shatter too easily when ripe? Gone. The ones with thick stalks and tight heads? You replant them, over and over, until what you hold in your hand is no longer wild wheat. It's your wheat. At first it supplements your diet, then it becomes your diet. You plant barley, emmer, einkorn. Later, lentils, peas, chickpeas. What was once scavenged from the wild is now designed to feed you. And it's not just plants. You begin to tame animals too. At first, the goats are just easier to follow. They return to familiar places, graze on nearby hills, sometimes sleep near your camp. You don't chase them anymore. You manage them. You kill only the males, let the females live, breed. Then you pen them in with sticks, tether them with fiber. Before long, they're yours. Goats, sheep, pigs, cattle. You turn prey into property. The rhythm of your life changes. You no longer follow the seasons across the land. You bring the seasons to you. You plant in spring, weed in summer, harvest in fall, store in winter. Then you do it all again. The year becomes a circle. Your memory becomes a calendar. And that calendar needs a home. Your village grows, houses expand, storage rooms appear, granaries, workshops. You make pottery, not as art, but as infrastructure. You need vessels to keep flour dry, to ferment beer, to cook porridge. You discover that clay, when fired hard enough, becomes waterproof, durable, essential. You live in one place long enough to bury your dead under your floor, to plant fig trees and watch them grow, to see your child walk through the same doorway you did at their age. And slowly, other things change too. You work harder now. Farming isn't leisure. It's backbreaking. Your hands blister, your knees ache. You grind grain for hours every day. Your diet narrows. You miss the wild game, the berries, the honey. Your health declines. Bones show signs of repetitive stress, arthritis, nutritional deficiencies. You shrink slightly. Your teeth rot. But there are more of you. Farming supports larger populations. Villages swell to hundreds, then thousands. And with more people comes complexity. Not everyone farms. Some people specialize, making tools, weaving cloth, building walls. Others become managers of food, of land, of people. Inequality creeps in like a shadow. Grain can be stored, and what can be stored can be owned. For the first time, food means wealth, and wealth means power. You build walls not just to keep animals out, but to keep other people out. or in. You invent new systems to manage this change. You mark clay tokens with symbols, early accounting, maybe even proto-writing. You develop leadership, elders, councils, eventually chieftains. And with leadership comes conflict, status, hierarchy. The family that controls the best land starts controlling more than just land. Still, you build. You arrange houses in rows. You align them with the sun. You pave walkways with stone. You create neighborhoods, then temples. In places like Çatalhöyük, you climb across flat-roofed houses with ladders and walkways, entering homes from above like birds nesting in a cliff. In others, like Jericho, you build towers and walls to watch over your fields. You haven't left the Stone Age yet, but it's starting to crack. Because in the corners of your village, someone has found a different kind of rock. One that doesn't shatter when struck, but bends. One that glows red when heated. One that can be hammered into shapes, ornaments, and eventually tools, copper. You're still working flint and obsidian, still chipping hand axes and scrapers. But the rules are changing. A new kind of technology is emerging, not from force, but from fire. And with it comes a new kind of human problem. Ambition. Because now you have things, resources, land, herds, prestige. And those things need protection. Or conquest. And in the flickering shadows of your clay-walled home, you turn that copper pin over in your hand and wonder, what else could this metal become? The copper glints in the firelight, reddish, smooth, almost soft beneath your thumb. You've been shaping stone your whole life, flint and obsidian napped to perfection, blades that could shave hair from your arm. But this is something else. It doesn't fracture. It yields. When you strike it, it flattens. When you heat it, it glows, softens, flows. You are a craftsman in a Neolithic town like Çatalhöyük. The air is heavy with the scent of clay and ash. Your village bustles with hundreds of people, chickens clucking, dogs barking, children weaving rush mats by the hearth. Your walls are painted with bulls, vultures, and dancing figures. Above you, a ladder leads to the rooftop world of your neighbors. But inside, in this little corner of fire and shadow, you work metal for the very first time. You hammer a nugget of native copper into a bead. It is bright, precious, rare, not stronger than stone, yet not sharper, but beautiful. It shines like sunlight trapped in solid form. And that alone gives it power. At first, metal is a novelty, a symbol of status. You wear it, trade it, offer it to the spirits. You don't think of it as a replacement for stone tools. You think of it as a better stone, one that feels alive when it touches flame. And then, perhaps by accident, you make a discovery that changes everything. You line your pottery kiln with the wrong kind of rock, one streaked with green. It gets hot, hotter than it ever has before. You smell something strange, hear a crack, and when you clear the ashes the next morning, you find it, a puddle of metal at the bottom. Pure copper, melted, smelted. You've unlocked metallurgy. You don't know it yet, but this is the hinge of history, because melted copper can be cast, poured into molds, shaped with exquisite control. Not just beads or pins, but axes, knives, hooks. And later, when you learn to mix it with tin, creating bronze, the transformation will accelerate. Tools that are tougher than stone. Weapons that are stronger, deadlier, more terrifying. Helmets, swords, shields. Your quiet village, once protected by ritual and tradition, will begin to dream of walls, warriors, kings, but for now, you are still a child of the Stone Age. Your best blades are obsidian, volcanic glass sharper than surgical steel. Your arrows are tipped with flint. Your sickles are still fitted with microliths. You haven't let go of stone. You've simply added something new to your world. And in this in-between moment, we meet a man frozen in time. High in the Alps, 5,300 years ago, a traveler falls in the snow. His body is covered in tattoos, his clothes sewn with care, leggings, a cloak, a grass cape. In his hand he holds a copper axe. Not crude, not symbolic, functional. Next to it, a flint knife. In his quiver, arrows tipped with stone. This is Utsi the Iceman, a perfect snapshot of a world transforming. The Copper Age, or Chalcolithic, is not a clean break. It is a long, messy overlap. Stone doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers. It competes. In some cases, it outperforms metal. Flint cuts better. Obsidian slices cleaner. But copper reshapes power. It requires mining, smelting, fuel, specialists, trade routes. All of this leads to complexity, and complexity leads to hierarchy. You dig deeper now. You go to places like Timna in modern Israel, where copper lies in veins under red rock. You carve tunnels. You organize labor. Someone has to feed the workers. Someone has to guard the ore. Someone gets more than someone else. Inequality hardens like cooled metal. But so does connection. The need for tin to make bronze, for copper alone is too soft, sparks the first international supply chains. You trade over vast distances, through mountains, across seas. Language barriers break down, cultures blend, alliances form. So do rivalries. You mark status not just with what you wear, but what you control. A bronze sword is not just a weapon. It is a symbol, a badge of authority, a declaration that you have access to others don't. The village becomes a town. The town becomes a fortress. The fortress becomes a city-state. And the age of stone, which once shaped your mind, your hands, your body, begins to glow and fade. But it never truly ends. You still carve with stone, still bury obsidian blades with your dead, still pass down sacred hand axes made 1,000 years ago. The past doesn't disappear. It layers, like ash in a fire pit, like sediment in a cave. Your biology, your instincts, your rhythms, they're still carved by 3 million years of stone. The spark that drove you to pick up a rock and shape it into something more, it still burns. And so tonight, in your quiet home, beneath electric light and concrete ceilings, you close your eyes. You sleep in a world of algorithms and satellites. But the dreams that come, they are older. They walk upright through the savannah. They press fingers into clay. They hold stones against the firelight. And they whisper, "Try this." The fire has burned low now. Its light fades to embers. Soft red, pulsing gently like the heartbeat of the earth. Around you the forest has gone still. No more cracking branches, no distant mammoth cries. Just the hush of night and the slow, even rhythm of your breath. You've walked a long way to get here. From the first time you stood on 2 feet, uncertain and off balance, to the day your fingers struck stone with purpose, to the quiet, flickering glow where fire danced in your eyes for the first time. You've chased herds, crossed oceans, buried your dead with love. You've painted walls in the dark and whispered stories no one remembers. And through it all, you endured. Not because you were the strongest, not because you were the fastest, but because you were the one who noticed, who wondered, who imagined. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, remember this. The part of you that dreams